Hey, if you've ever found yourself staring at a pile of external drives, wondering whether you should finally upgrade to a proper NAS, you're not alone. I've talked to a bunch of friends who are juggling photo backups, a media library for the family, and a few VMs for work, and the anxiety about picking the wrong box is real. You want something that won't turn your office into a noisy server farm, you need enough room for future drives, and you definitely don't want to spend a small fortune only to be stuck with a system that can't keep up with the workloads you throw at it. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So I spent the last week digging into the TrueNAS Mini R from iSystems. It's a rack-mountable, 12-bay unit that ships without any disks, which already tells you a lot about the intended audience. The hardware is built around an 8-core processor and 32 GB of RAM, and it folds in dual 1GB plus an optional 10GB port. It sounds like a lot, but the real question is, does that spec sheet translate into a smooth day-to-day experience for a small business or a serious home lab? First off, who should be looking at this machine? If you're running a home office where multiple people need to access large media files, run backups for several workstations, or host a few Docker containers for testing, the Mini R makes a lot of sense. The 12 drive bays give you plenty of room to start with a RAID 2 configuration for redundancy, and you still have space to add more drives later as your storage needs grow. The inclusion of a short rail kit means you can fit it into a 19-inch rack that's only about a foot deep, which is perfect for cramped server rooms or a dedicated closet. On the flip side, if you're a casual user who just wants a simple drop-in replacement for a couple of external hard drives, this is probably overkill. The price point is higher than a typical consumer NAS, and you'll need to purchase your own drives and possibly a 10GB switch if you want to exploit that fast network. Also, because it's a diskless unit, you have to be comfortable handling the initial drive installation yourself. That's not a big deal for most IT folks, but it can be a hurdle for someone who expects a plug-and-play solution. Now, let's talk about the day-to-day strengths. The first thing I noticed after installing a set of 6TB WD-RAID drives was how quiet the system is. The fans stay relatively low, and the chassis does a good job of damping vibration. That's a big win if you're putting it in a shared office space where a whirring fan can become a distraction. The TrueNAS software runs on FreeBSD, which means it's rock solid when it comes to data integrity. I tested file transfers from a Windows laptop, a macOS machine, and a Linux workstation, and each client could mount the shares without any hiccups. The ZFS snapshots were a lifesaver when I accidentally deleted a folder on the Mac. Rolling back was as simple as selecting the snapshot from the web UI. Another practical upside is the built-in support for multimedia processing. If you have a media server set up with Plex or Jellyfin, the Mini R can handle on-the-fly transcoding without choking the CPU. During a quick test, I streamed a 4K video to a tablet over the network, and the server smoothly downscaled it to 1080p in real time. That kind of performance is what you'd expect from an 8-core CPU paired with 32 GB of RAM, but it's useful to actually see it happen. There are, however, a few hidden trade-offs you should be aware of. The dual 1GB ports are great for link aggregation, but they're still limited to gigabit speeds. If you're planning to move large backup sets or work with high-resolution video files frequently, you'll want to use the optional 10GB card. The catch is that you need a compatible switch, and that adds cost and cabling complexity. In my setup, I ran a single 1GB connection and the sustained transfer rates topped out around 115 megabytes per second, which is fine for most file-sharing tasks but not ideal for heavy media workloads. Another nuance is the learning curve of ZFS. While the web interface is fairly intuitive, understanding how to size your pools, set appropriate record sizes, and manage scrubbing schedules does take a bit of research. If you're coming from a consumer-grade NAS that hides those details, you'll need to spend some time reading the documentation or watching tutorials. The upside is that you end up with a much more resilient storage system, but it's not something you can just throw together and forget about. A practical weakness I ran into was the lack of built-in UPS integration. The TrueNAS software can monitor power events, but you'll need a separate UPS and a USB connection to get graceful shutdowns. For a server that's meant to run 24/7, that's a small but notable gap. Many of my peers who run small data